Canadian International Development Research Center. I'd also like to welcome those of you in the audience who are joining us online on the Google Hangout and other social media platforms. I'm محمد, the editor-in-chief of assolmصرية.com, and I have the pleasure of moderating tonight's discussion. So tonight we won't be listening to speeches or lectures. We will be listening to a debate, a lively and engaging debate, we hope, in which each of these teams will try to win you over to their side of the argument. But obviously it's not only about winning or losing, it's also about what we get out of this debate. So hopefully in 2 hours' time, maybe not everyone will have changed their mind. Possibly most of us will still be on the same side of the argument as we are now. But we'll have a richer opinion and a better understanding of the issue at hand. So what is the issue at hand? Well, it's not whether governments should aim for growth or equity. That's not the debate. Any policymaker knows that they have to combine elements of both. Even the most radical governments throughout history have aimed at achieving some sort of the two goals combined. Ronald Reagan, the patron saint of tax cuts, as he's sometimes called, actually increased taxes in 1983 to pay for social security and Medicare. And in the Soviet Union, meeting production targets were so much of a priority that millions were starved to death, so that the country could industrialize faster. So we're not talking about absolutes here. We're talking about priorities. It's not about ready-made policies that work for any country anywhere, but about Arab countries in transition, with all the challenges, the opportunities, the peculiarities of these countries. Is the economics of growth more of a priority than the politics of equity? Yes, says this team, and no, contends the other team. On the yes side sits Shanta Devarajan, the chief economist of the World Bank's Middle East and North Africa region, and Huda Salim, an economist at the Economic Research Forum. And confronting them on the no team is Ahmed Galal, the managing director of ERF, and former finance minister of Egypt, and Ravi Kapoor, PhD professor in world affairs, international professor of applied economics and management, and professor of economics at Cornell University. I refer you to the handouts you brought for more details about the panel's long records on achievement. Tonight they will be presenting their own views, not their organizations. And now, let me just say a few words about the structure of tonight. We'll start with a vote, an initial vote, in which we'll assess how this audience feels about the issue at hand. Then we'll move on to the opening arguments. Each member of the teams will have 5 minutes to deliver their opening arguments. After that, we'll move into a 20-minute sort of free-flow debate, in which I'll be asking questions and the speakers will have the chance to answer them and to talk directly and cross-examine one another. We'll also have 3 rounds of Q&As, 2 from this audience here in the room and 1 from the audience online. Then the closing remarks by the speakers, and finally a final vote to see which way your opinion will sway. The debate is being live streamed through Google Hangout on the link. I'm not sure if it shows here or not, but anyway, people have registered already, and I think we have a number of people watching the debate at the moment on the Google Hangout. If you'd like to tweet about this debate, you can use the following hashtags, and also if you want to ask questions, please use them and we will address them throughout tonight's event. There's a social media team here as well. They are promoting tonight's event, and they might be coming after the event to ask you some questions and some quick interviews. Before we enter into the heated debate, let's just have some calm words of context. All the speakers tonight are contributors to the recently published handbook on international development, ideas, experience, and prospects, released by Oxford University Press earlier this year, And the editor of this book is Bruce Currier, the Regional Director of IDFC Office in Cairo. And I'd now like to invite you to give a brief presentation, Bruce.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning for joining us from North America. As was mentioned, I'm the Regional Director for Canada's International Development Research Centre, IDRC, a Canadian organization that supports knowledge, innovation, solutions for the developing world. Usually, IDRC has a role of supporting other people's ideas. About 3 years ago, a number of us got together and started asking ourselves, is this a good time to do a stock taking of what do we understand as the concept of international development? We had just experienced the financial crisis of 2008. We knew by 2015 the development agenda would again be in question. So we assembled a team. All of the contributors are represented on stage. Sorry, all of the participants today were contributors, along with almost 90 others from around the world across 2 generations. And what we asked of each of them was, on a particular topic, to ask what were the major changes in thinking that have occurred over the past 60 years? What explained that change in thinking, the coevolution, the interaction between ideas and the experiences? And what are the implications for these changes moving forward? Personally, as the editor, it's been a wonderful path. I've had tremendous intellectual discussions with each of the people on stage and look forward to tonight's event. What has also been important with what came out is that development is increasingly about what societies decide to do for themselves, not what the international community or donor agencies tell them to do necessarily. So, without further ado, I turn it over to the debaters in a moment, just to say that if you are interested in the volume itself, the full text is actually available at the site developmentideas.info. And you'll see me again shortly as I will try to bring forward the voice of those of you who are online and make sure those questions are represented here in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And now, before we move into the heated debate, let's see what you think. The vote. So the statement is, the economics of growth is a more urgent priority than the politics of equity. You have voting devices with you. Don't start the vote now, but if you are going to vote yes, you agree with the statement, please press 1. If you disagree with it, press 2. And if you don't have an opinion yet about it, press 3. The voting will take 20 seconds, and the audience joining us online, please use the question section to enter your answers. And the vote will start right now. Okay, so yes, 33% of you agree with the statement, 53.9%, so 54% almost disagree with it, and almost 13% haven't formed an opinion yet. That's a good swing vote. That if you can sway it, Shanta and Huda, you will just about win this debate. But you need to get going. So let's start with the yes camp. Shanta, you have 5 minutes to tell us why you think growth is more of a priority than equity.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and good afternoon, everybody. The reason why we're even debating this question is that it's quite appropriate, and I'm sure our opponents will bring this up, that we observe countries that have registered high growth, high rates of economic growth, and very little reduction in poverty. But if you look more closely, most of those cases are ones where the growth was due to some increase in a commodity price, say an oil-rich country like Gabon, poverty because all of that oil money goes to a few families. If you ask the question differently, what are the policies that are required to reduce poverty? It turns out, and we will try to convince you, those are the same policies that are required to promote economic growth. And that is why the economics of growth is more important than the politics of equity. Let me explain why. The reason is very simple. If you look across the developing world, and we document that in this volume as well, the reason why some countries are stuck with high poverty and low growth is that many of these policies are captured by the non-poor, affectionately known as the rich. And so, if you can devise policies that generate growth, those are going to help the others, the people who are left out of the growth process because it's being captured by the rich. Let me just illustrate with a few examples. There's many countries that run large current account deficits because of macroeconomic problems. And the real exchange rate becomes overvalued. Now, overvalued real exchange rate is actually a big benefit to rich people because it makes imports cheaper. And so they like to keep the real exchange rate overvalued, and they resist attempts at devaluation. But the experience we've had is that when there is an overvalued exchange rate and you're able to devalue, you get a surge in growth, as well as the fact that now you make tradables goods more attractive and exports grow. And most of those exports are, in poor countries, most of those exports are agricultural goods, which benefit poor farmers. So Ghana found out that when they devalued the cedi back in the 1980s, you have this big surge in growth, and you get a big reduction in poverty. Trade protection is another way that is another kind of policy that is captured by the rich. So you have countries that follow what is called industrial policy, but that really is another way of protecting capital, interests of capital. Meanwhile, these countries have a large pool of underemployed or underemployed labor, most of whom are unskilled. If you can promote policies that generate growth, which is to remove the trade protection and allow the country to follow labor-intensive export growth, you not only get a surge in growth, as China found, but you get employment of the unskilled. So you get a reduction in poverty. Infrastructure. Everyone talks about infrastructure. There are huge infrastructure deficits. Well, and there are countries in Africa that have an infrastructure deficit of only 25% of the population has access to electricity, for instance. Now, which 25% is that? It's not the poor. It's the rich. So if you can actually improve infrastructure so that the other 75% have access to electricity, you not only increase growth, because that's a huge benefit to economic growth, but you allow the poor to have access to infrastructure. And finally, let's talk about education. There's a lot of evidence out there that building human capital, building your human capital base, is the most important ingredient for sustained long-term economic growth. And yet we have huge education deficits. There are countries where not at the primary level, but at the secondary level, only about 50% of the children are in school, and learning outcomes are very poor. Now again, the rich make sure that their children go to school, and they make sure that their children are educated. In fact, in this country, in Egypt, you have like 70% of the students who go for private tutoring. Well, those aren't the poor children.
I think just run out of time, I'm afraid, Shanta, so
if you could, just one
we
second.
have to keep it straight so that everyone can speak.
Well, you know the answer.
We have 2 hours to go, so I'm sure you get another chance. Dr. Kemal, seems very convincing what Shanta just said.
First of all, thank you, Khalid, and delighted to have you all. I thought that Shanta did a very good job today. Played a trick on us, actually. If people say something like growth is important because it generates jobs, because it is He shifted grounds. He gave us something totally different. He said, no, you know what? You only need to worry about policies that will reduce poverty. And actually, in the process, you're also helping growth. So he